Hi, I'm Yoam. Today I want to talk about the challenges of managing an international team. I want to start by recommending a book that I'll be using in this talk that really changed how I manage my teams, and that is The Cultural Map by Erin Meyer. The book talks about what it means to manage people from different cultures, and it really helps you understand how different yet similar we all are. For me, after reading this book, I had a much better understanding of what it takes to manage a team with diverse cultures. So I really, really highly recommend it. And like I said, I'm going to be using it during today's talk. Let's start with the basics. To manage an international team, the single most important thing you need to accept and understand is that whatever your culture is, whatever you assume is the right way to do things, might not be true for other people you are managing. And that above all, you are going to have to make an effort to understand and study those differences. I can tell you that for me, this was not an easy task, especially when it came to cultures that were significantly different from mine. The first time I managed teams that were not only geographically far from me, but also culturally far, I didn't even realize what I was doing wrong until it was almost too late. So the first step is to truly accept that your management culture might not be the natural way people you're managing are used to. To be clear, I'm not asking you to become someone different. That is as ridiculous as asking people who work for you to change who they are for your sake. You still need to be who you are. The difference is that when you're managing an international team, you need to be a lot more attuned to how you communicate and what you expect from your team. When I manage an international team and I think we might have a communication issue, the first thing I ask myself is whether this is a personal issue or a cultural issue. And I can tell you more than once I found out that the issue was more about cultural differences than personal ones. The next thing you have to do is to make a list of all the different cultures you are managing. If you're not sure, it is totally okay to just ask people about their culture. What you'll find is just by this simple step, you're already going to make things better. Once you know all the different cultures you're managing, you should take the time to study more about them. And today we have great AI tools where, just go to ChatGPT and ask questions about any particular culture. So I'm going to go over the 4 points that I study, and it's based on the Cultural Map book that I just talked about. The first point that I study is attitude toward authority. And that means how a culture views the relationship between manager and employee. For example, I'm originally from Israel, where we view authority in a very egalitarian way to the point where someone will directly argue with the CEO of a company in front of the entire company, and the CEO won't mind. You know what? They might even appreciate it. While I know that when I was managing people from the Far East, such a behavior would be totally unacceptable. The second thing that I study is decision making, how a culture prefers to make decisions, top down or consensual. For example, in the US where I live, most decisions are expected to go through a consensual process where different stakeholders provide input. However, at day's end, the final decision is at the hands of a manager. And I remember situations with other cultures that I manage where my employees expected me to make firm and decisive decisions, and they were not really interested in long decision talking conversations. In fact, doing so made them think that I'm not a good manager since I'm supposed to be paid to make decisions, not to ask them what they think about those decisions. And to be clear, there's no judgment here. I honestly can't tell you which way is better, but they're different. The third thing I research is communication style, how people prefer to communicate with their manager. From low context cultures like the US, where you're expected to be very clear and precise when you communicate. And in fact, people can get really upset with you if you don't. And that is compared to high context cultures where you need to know how to read between the lines. And there's a lot of subtle communication tools that you need to learn in order to be effective. The last thing is feedback. Do people in this culture prefer direct or indirect feedback? Being originally from Israel, probably one of the most direct feedback cultures in the world, I had to work extensively on toning down my style of direct feedback, which was sometimes viewed as rude here in the US, which is a more indirect type of culture. There are more cultural differences that she talks about in the book, but if you focus on the 4 that I just covered, you will learn a lot and very important stuff that you need as a manager in order to understand the people that you're going to interact with. So, once you have a grasp of the different cultures you are managing, I like to set up a meeting to openly discuss those differences with the team. And I start by talking about myself and my culture, and I encourage people to talk about their own. What I try to get out of this meeting is to make sure that as a group, we have awareness of our differences and that we understand that we cannot just assume we fully understand each other. I know this might sound obvious to some of you, but it's not. Yes, it's obvious to people that someone from the US and someone from China might have different cultures, but it is not that obvious at all. What does it mean and how and where it shows up? And this is why it is important to start by introducing your own culture as a manager first. Because by you showing openness on your end and the willingness to adapt, everyone is going to look to you, and that attitude is really going to make a difference. Remember that you need to practice these cultural points on a regular basis, especially when you're stressed and things are not going as well as you think they should. When everything's good, you'll find that it's much easier for you to be open and accepting of other cultures. But it is much harder not to fall into your own familiar management style when there are issues. I personally test myself when there's a Sev 1 issue to see how well I've incorporated different cultures into my management style. And what I find is that I'm not perfect, of course, but I'm getting better and better the more I practice. Last but not least, don't forget that at day's end, people are more than just the culture that they come from. They also have their own individual culture that is unique to them. So, for example, yes, I'm originally from Israel, but I've lived in the US for over 20 years, and that had a very large impact on how I view things nowadays and how I manage. Don't make the mistake of taking the very important general attributes of a culture and using them as a strict guideline of how everyone from that culture should and would behave. I guarantee you that there are some very direct people from Japan, a very indirect culture, and I personally know people from Israel, a very direct culture, that are very indirect. As always, the key to success here is open communication. I've managed people from all major cultures in the world, and even though the communication style might be vastly different between them, all of them, without exception, require open communication to be effective. I hope this helps. Please like, comment, and share to spread the word. See you next time. Bye.